Hi, this is Reliq. Reliq is not a patch bay. It's not a sequencer. It's not a MIDI controller, a modulation engine, or a Eurorack module. Reliq is a hybrid instrument. It is designed to bring all of these aspects of performance together into a playable and musical interface. If you are watching this video, you probably just received your Reliq, or you are trying to understand Reliq better. In the next few minutes, we are going to set it up, connect a few things, and build a small hybrid patch. The goal is to understand the basic ideas behind the instrument and be up and exploring Reliq within a few minutes. Let's start with a box. When you open the box, you will find Reliq, the Breakout module, the required cables, and the power supply. On the box, you will also find the QR code that takes you directly to the online manual. The manual is updated regularly together with new Reliq versions, so we strongly recommend using the online manual as a main reference. Now, let's connect the Breakout module. The Breakout module is the physical connection point between Reliq and the analog part of a setup. It provides 16 analog inputs, 16 analog outputs, 32 CV outputs, 16 gate outputs, and a clock and reset out. You can keep the Breakout module in its enclosure or mount it into a Eurorack case by removing the 4 screws. On the left side of the module, you will see the USB-C connector. This connects directly to Reliq using the supplied USB-C cable. This is not a standard connection. It is a dedicated connection between Reliq and the Breakout module used for power and communication. Now we can connect the power supply to Reliq and power it on. Before we start exploring, the first thing we recommend is updating Reliq to the latest Reliq version. To do this, connect the USB-C to USB-A cable between the computer and the USB-C port on the back of Reliq. Then download the Reliq updater from the support page, open it, press update, and follow the instructions on the screen. The update might take a few minutes. Once it's complete, Reliq will restart with the latest version installed. Now that Reliq is at its best, let's start patching and quickly understand the main pages. Reliq is organized into pages. Each one of them has a clear musical purpose and it's always one button away. Pages are on the bottom side of the screen. Each one of them has its own color to indicate organization between the different functions of the instrument. The matrix page is where we make connections. The mixer is where we can control the levels of these connections. And sequencer is where we create notes, automation, and movement. Clip page is where we create variations, and keys is where we can play and record ideas live. LFO and envelope pages is where we can create automated movement through modulation. There is also a DAW page, which is where we can bring a computer in the game, if needed to. Song mode is where we can arrange larger structures, and settings is where we configure the overall behavior of the instrument. In this video, we will visit each of these pages at least once, but we will keep everything simple. Let's start on the matrix page. In a normal studio or live setup, you connect one audio output to one audio input using a cable. For example, you might connect the output of an oscillator into the input of a filter. Then you might connect the output of a synth into a reverb or into your mixer. Reliq lets us create these connections and switch between them with just pressing a button. Let's make a very simple patch. Take the output of a VCO and connect it to input 1 of the Breakout module. Then take the output of a filter and connect it to input 2. Then take the output of a reverb and connect it to input 3. Now let's connect the destinations. Connect output 1 of the Breakout module to the input of the filter, output 2 to the input of the reverb, and connect outputs 14 and 15 to the master output. This could be a stereo mixer input, an audio interface, or even the speakers. At this point, we strongly recommend naming your inputs and outputs. This is not strictly required, but it makes everything much easier to understand later, especially once the setup grows. On the matrix page, use the joystick encoder to select input 1. Then press Edit I/O. A keyboard appears on the screen. Let's name this input VCO. Now select input 2 and name it VCF. Input 3 and name it reverb. Out 1 and name it VCF. Out 2 and name it reverb. And now let's go to outputs 14 and 15 and name them Master 1 and Master 2. If you are using the master out as a stereo output, we can set them as a 2-channel group. Now, the matrix is not just showing numbers, it is showing the actual instruments and destinations in the setup. Let's create our first routing. We connected our oscillator to input 1, and we connected the input of the filter to output 1. So to set the oscillator into the filter, we create a connection from input 1 to output 1. This is the same idea as taking a patch cable from the oscillator and plugging it into the filter. The difference is that now this connection lives inside Reliq. Now let's send the filter to the master output. The output of the filter is connected to input 2, and our master output is on outputs 14 and 15. So create a connection from input 2 to outputs 14 and 15, and now audio flows from the oscillator into the filter and then to the master out. This is our first routing. Let's copy this routing to the next slot. Press copy, select the current routing, then press paste, and the next routing slot to paste it. Now we have a second version of the same routing. In this second routing, let's change the signal path a bit. Instead of sending the filter directly to the master out, let's set the filter into the reverb first. So we connect input 2, which is the filter output, to output 2, which goes to the reverb. Then we connect input 3, which is the reverb output, to outputs 15 and 16, which is our master. Now we have two routings. The first one is dry, oscillator, filter and master. The second one goes through the reverb, oscillator, filter, reverb, master. Now press the routings button and switch between them at any time. In this way, we can change what normally takes several patch cables and several hands with just one button. Every routing can also have its own level settings for every input and out. Let's move to the mix page. On the mix page, you can control the level of the inputs and outputs with the virtual faders on the pads. Let's lower the VCO a little bit, then switch between the routings again. You can hear and see that the routing and mix belong together. This means each routing can behave like a complete scene, different signal path, but also different mix. Now we have connected just a few modules, but the Breakout can route and mix Eurorack, line-level instruments, effects, pedals, or any other kind of audio signal you want to route and mix. It can be used as a studio patch bay, as a set of routings for different parts of live set, or even like an actual instrument, performed or sequenced in real time. We already have a simple signal path, so let's go to the sequencer page. Here we see the tracks of Reliq. Each track can sequence notes, automation, modulation, generative sequencing techniques, and quite a few more things. Let's use track 1 to control a Eurorack patch. Select track 1, go to the track settings, set the output type to CV. Now track 1 will send pitch, modulation, and gate information to the first output of the Breakout module. Connect CVA1 to the pitch input of the oscillator, and connect CVB1 to the cutoff input of the filter. You can also connect gate 1 to an envelope or gate input if the patch needs it. To enter notes, press patch on the first row. Each pad represents a step. If you press and hold the note, we can edit its parameters. We can change the pitch, velocity, duration, probability, trigger settings, micro timing, and quite a few more things. For now, let's keep it simple and create a short melody. Already we have the matrix routing the audio and the sequencer controlling the pitch of our modular voice. Let's add one small movement. Go to the envelope or LFO page. Each track can have its own set of envelopes and LFOs. And in this example, let's use a simple envelope. Assign the envelope to CVB, and since CVB is connected to the filter cutoff, the envelope can now shape the filter every time the sequencer plays a note. Now let's add the MIDI instrument. Reliq can control MIDI instruments, drum machines, or Hertz per volt synths, Buchla systems, and DAWs as well. Back to the sequencer page, let's go to track 2. Track settings, and set the output to one of the MIDI outs. For example, MIDI output 1, channel 1. Connect the TRS type A MIDI cable from the back of Reliq to the MIDI of any instrument. In this case, let's use a drum machine. Now, let's change the track type to track. In drum mode, the track is organized around drum sounds instead of a melodic keyboard. Let's assign a few sounds. Set the first sound to kick by setting its note and channel, the second to snare, the third to hi-hat, and so on. Now let's add a few steps. All the steps are a kick. We can press and hold any step to change the sound or any other parameter. But if we want more detail, we can enter any of the piano roll pages by clicking the encoder on top of the track offset parameters. For example, for a pitch piano roll, let's click the encoder above the pitch offset. Here we can see the zoomed in version of the track, sounds or beats on the vertical axis and time on the horizontal one. Let's add a snare. We can also play anything live and record it instead of sequencing step on the sequencer. Let's go on the keys page. The keys page is where we can play and record ideas live. Because track 2 is a drum track, the keys page shows the drum sounds as playable pads. Let's press record. Now play a few hi-hats live from the keys page. When we stop recording, the hi-hat pattern is now part of the sequence. Now we have a simple drum pattern in a few seconds. Let's create a variation. We go to the clip page, and the clip is a pattern on a track. Press copy and select the clip we just created on track 2, and then paste it to the next clip slot. Now select the new clip. Go back to the keys page and record a different hi-hat pattern. Now we have two variations. We can switch between them manually, or we can use follow-ups so that one clip automatically triggers another after a certain amount of time. For example, hold the second clip and select the first clip as its follow-up. Now the second clip can return to the first one automatically. We will explore clips and follow-ups much deeper in a later video, but for now the important idea is that clips let you organize different patterns with different settings on each track. We have a melody on our Eurorack and a drum pattern running in parallel. So far we have used the first dry routing in the matrix, but the matrix itself can also be sequenced. We can enable the matrix sequencer by pressing Shift and track button 16. The matrix sequencer looks similar to a normal track, but instead of sequencing notes, it sequences routings. Let's put the dry routing on the first step, then put the reverb routing on a later step, for example step 9. Now the first half of the pattern uses the dry signal path and the second half uses the reverb signal. Now we are not only sequencing notes, we are also sequencing the connections between the instruments. Patch itself becomes part of the composition. Now we change how our setup is connected together. We sequence CV, we create the drum pattern with a variation, and we modulate it at the same time. All this is completely DAW-less. But if we want to add a computer in the game, let's have a quick look on the DAW page. Connect Reliq to your computer using the USB on the USB MIDI port of Reliq. Reliq supports integration with Ableton Live and Bitwig Studio using the scripts available on the support page. Once connected, Reliq can control parts of your DAW workflow and stay synchronized with your hardware setup. We can control audio coming from our modular pads, control clips, and keep the DAW and hardware running together. We will cover DAW integration in more detail in a dedicated chapter, but it is the core architecture behind it that Reliq is designed to sit between hardware, modular, MIDI, and the computer. Finally, let's look at song mode. If you like what you have built, the sequence, the routing, the mix, the modulation, and the clips, we can capture it as a snapshot. A snapshot stores the state of the project at the moment. We can create multiple snapshots and arrange them in time to build a larger structure. Before we finish, let's quickly mention settings. The settings page is where you configure global behavior. For example, sequencer defaults, MIDI settings, module settings, clock resolution, gate voltages, display brightness, and system information. If something needs to be adjusted globally, this is usually where we will find it. In the last few minutes, we connected the Breakout modules, we named our inputs and outputs, we created matrix routings, we switched between a dry and a wet signal path, we adjusted level on the mixer page, we sequenced a modular voice with control voltage, we added a MIDI drum machine, we recorded live from the keys page, and we created a few clip variations. We even sequenced the matrix itself. We brought the DAW in the setup without looking at the screen or touching a mouse, and we captured a simple idea in a song mode. This is already a complete hybrid setup, and this is only the surface. Each part of Reliq goes much deeper, and in the next chapters we will focus on each area one by one. For now, the focus is on the basic mental model. Pages organize the workflow, the matrix control connections, the mixer control level, tracks create movement, clips hold pattern, and song turns ideas into structure. Once these ideas click, the rest of Reliq becomes much easier to explore. We hope you enjoy Reliq, and if you have any questions, feel free to join our Discord community or visit our online manual. See you in the next chapter.